If you remember trying to clear the Dash level, Mr. Incredible's bouncing gut, and taking on the Underminer in co-op mode, then you grew up playing The Incredibles, but which one? Because there were 4 completely different versions released for the original tie-in game, and 3 different versions of the sequel, and in this video we're going to compare each of them. There's a lot to cover, so let's get straight into it, starting with the flagship version of The Incredibles released for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, PC, and developed by Heavy Iron Studios. This version carries on the tradition of memorable Pixar menus. This time around, we've got Sam Jackson screaming at you as you navigate.
Come on, I want to play.
Alright.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's get this thing on.
The game starts just like the movie, with a younger Mr. Incredible trying to apprehend Bon Voyage and his goons. The first level is your typical tutorial with Frozone narrating all the controls.
Press this button to activate your punch.
My god, no wonder the superheroes were banned after this. Look, Mr. Incredible just punches these goons right off the edge with zero hesitation. Oh look, you can see the people down below. Yep, just throw a giant vault door at them, Bob. And look, this game encourages violence against the henchman. It's telling me to throw him against the control box. This version is a pretty standard 3D action-adventure game. You run around levels, beating up enemies, and navigating past obstacles. Each character will have their own unique set of superpowers from the movie. In Bob's case, it's super strength and the ability to do these quick-time jumps. The next level has you play as Elastigirl, who's just as violent as her soon-to-be husband. And thanks to her powers, she can grab the bad guys from far away and chug them over the edge. And I must say, punching the henchmen out of the sky is super satisfying. Oh, look at this poor guy, he gets thrown into the air conditioner and then electrocuted. Also, Bon Voyage must have a really good pension plan or something because he's got endless amounts of henchmen. The next level starts with this fun flying section as you hold on to Bobby for dear life while zooming around the city. This is followed by a boss battle against Bon Voyage in his helicopter, introducing this game's single boss mechanic of picking things up and chucking them. The next level takes place after a time skip and has you play as Wide Bob in the apartment inferno. And I like how Bob just keeps complaining about how out of shape he is while he runs around the flaming building.
I gotta get in shape.
Next up is one of the most memorable levels in the game, the Dash School Run.
Dash.
This level starts pretty chill, but before you know it, Dash is trying to dodge lorries on the highway, trains, police chases, and crates falling off trucks. Anyone else spot this Toy Story Easter egg?
I'm the Dash.
This is followed by 2 levels where you play as Dad Bod Bob on the island. Ah, look at that, the perfect male physique. He's like 3/4 gut. What a legend.
I must be out of shape.
These 2 levels have Bob run around the jungle, beating up machines and getting past obstacles. Once you clear them, you take on the first Omnidroid boss. And as a kid, I found this level impossible because the boss has 3 health bars. So you just have to keep chipping away at it by hitting the legs or throwing rocks at its head. And just as you think you're doing well, it'll decide to bugger off into the distance or chuck you into the lava. This is followed by more island levels, only this time Bob has a new outfit and he's back in shape. Still has the Hank Hill arse though. This level is also notable for Bob jumping into the flying blade machine and wreaking absolute havoc. And then we get another Omnidroid boss fight, but this one is even harder. I know this kind of happened in the movie, but I always thought this was a bit of a cop-out by the developers. Oh well, at least I can hide in the water this time. But I do appreciate the developers adding a literal walkthrough on how to beat the boss in the pause menu for us stupid children. Alright, what's next? A nice easy stage to clear the palette? Nope, we start with another boss battle. And this one is followed by a pretty long level of you running around, flipping switches, fighting henchmen, and avoiding lasers. The point of view then switches to Elastamum as she infiltrates the base. Now, most of this level is pretty similar to the last one, having you run around the facility, flipping switches, and beating up bad guys. Oh look, Helen can do the droidica. And I must say, I do love all of Helen's random ramblings throughout this level.
Whatever happened to ladies first?
Next up is the Dash Escape, and this one is pretty hard. You see, the game forces you to use the speed boost to beat the timer, but that will require some expert level precision to avoid all of these obstacles. And I still get PTSD every time I hear one of these game over trumpets. If you did manage to get to the later stages of this level, you were treated with some cool sections of Dash running on water. Ah, And then we get the Violet level, which is just annoying. It's a stealth level where you have to sneak past the guards using her invisibility, but the gauge just doesn't have enough invisibility, and if you get shot, you have to restart from the very beginning.
I need a break.
You're not doing anything, but at least this is followed by this fun monkey ball level where Dash and Violet roll around the island, destroying everything and everyone in sight. Alright, time for the exciting third act. But first, another level of Helen running around the base, flipping switches, and beating up bad guys. And then the same for Bob. With that out of the way, the Incredibles take on the game's final boss, the giant Omnidroid. This final boss fight alternates between trying to get the remote and, you guessed it, chucking rocks at the droid's weak spot while the other characters distract it. Oh look, the Toy Story car. Whoops. It's a Toyota, I'm sure it'll still run. The battle ends with Bob shooting the missile claw at the Omnidroid, and that's it. You can now run around the final level while the credits roll and Bob tries to catch his breath. Now, as was the style at the time, there was also a separate interactive PC game called Incredibles When Danger Calls. And this is your typical Disney interactive minigame collection which uses pre-rendered environments and models. And a lot of these minigames are just based around Dash being a terrible human being. Look, he's putting tax on the teacher's chair, trying to steal Violet's stuff, and throwing kitchen utensils in the air. Once you do all the initial games, you unlock the costumes and do a second batch of minigames like Bob chucking pods, Helen the boat, Dash outrunning the machines, and Violet blocking cannonballs. Look, if you don't put up a force field, the poor girl literally takes a cannonball to the face. Plus, you get this Frozone minigame. Okay, let's move on to the handhelds with the Game Boy Advance version. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up with an absolutely charming 2D art style. Look at Bob walk around with his tiny legs. Gameplay-wise, this is your typical beat-em-up. Walk right, beat up hordes of bad guys, rinse, and repeat. But you do get some occasional variety. For example, early on you get a level where you actually play as Frozone as he skates over the rooftops. And if you miss, he does this clumsy tumble. The first batch of levels also ends with a Bon Voyage boss fight, only this time you just beat him up in person while he makes French noises. You then get a whole bunch of levels as Fat Bob on the island, and look, they even animated his gut jiggling as he punches. The Omnidroid boss battles are there, but this time around you've just got to chip away at their health bar. Oh, what a lovely day. Oh shit. Also, I love how the henchmen flex and taunt you in this game. We then get a Helen boat level. Look at poor Violet being traumatized. This is followed by some beat-em-up levels. Helen can use her Elastipowers in combat, but she can also use them to parachute and climb up ledges. Violet's level is still annoying and relies on her turning invisible, but this time around she can at least use the force field to attack enemies. Meanwhile, Dash's level is another chase where you have to avoid the enemies. We then get a bunch more Bob and Helen levels before moving to the city, but this time around all the characters get their chance to shine. We have Bob versus the Omnidroid, Helen scaling the building, Dash trying to outrun the robots, then Frozone doing the same, and finally Violet protecting old people from falling debris. Oh, poor Granny took one right to the noggin. And that's it for the Game Boy game, but there was also a Java mobile version. This is a very basic game which has you switch between Bob and Helen as they run around levels, getting past obstacles and taking out enemies. And I like how Bob can just straight up grab Helen in this one. I mean, she doesn't seem to mind. Now, that's it for all the versions of the original movie's tie-in game. But a year later, Disney Interactive and Heavy Iron Studios would release a video game-only sequel called Rise of the Underminer. That's right, that one gag villain at the end of the movie. They based an entire game around him, and there were 3 different versions of it. So, were they any good? Well, let's start with the flagship version released on all the same platforms as the original. And just like that game, the menu also has a character screaming at you. Only this time, it's the Underminer voiced by Ham himself, John Ratzenberger.
Stereo, I'm twice as evil!
Now, the gameplay and combat is very similar to the first game. Unfortunately, Helen and the kids are no longer playable. In fact, they bugger off in the very first cutscene.
Honey, we'll go after the Underminer. You and the kids stop those drills.
But you can play as Frozone, and this is the game's big gimmick. This time around, you're able to switch between the 2 heroes at any time, and naturally each character will have a unique set of powers which you use to navigate through the levels. And this is one of those games that's way more fun to play co-op. I can sit here and talk about the poor jumping controls, or the repetitive enemies, or how all the bosses behave the same, but everyone I've talked to who played this game back in the day with a friend has nothing but fond memories. If you were playing this co-op, you spend most of your time goofing off and mucking about as you ran around the grey and brown levels, beating up the same enemies and waiting for your friend to respawn after they fell off the ledge for the 100th time. And I'm not sure who was yakking more during the playthrough of this game back in the day, me and my mate or the actual game characters.
How deep is this guy gonna run? Where does he think he's going? China? Come on, son. The bad guys always run.
It's just too bad they couldn't get the original voice actors back for this one. Plus, the game does introduce some unlockable abilities and basic RPG elements, which is a nice touch. The story is very basic. It revolves around Bob and Lucius delving deeper into the Underminer's lair, interacting with some minions and robots, and eventually taking on the Underminer himself before he pollutes the sky, turning the whole world into one big underground. Now, Rise of the Underminer also had a Game Boy version, and just like its big brother, it recycled a lot of the visuals and gameplay from its predecessor, which means it's another 2D side-scroller, only this time Bob rolls instead of runs. Just like the console game, you can swap between Bob and Lucius on the fly, and Frozone is actually a proper character this time around with his own arsenal of moves like the Ice Shot, the Ice Walk, and the Kamehameha. Just like the console version, this game is also pretty short and consists of you going through grey and brown levels fighting robots. To be honest, it does feel like the first game's art style is a little wasted on this one. Also, I love Frozone's posture when he's about to shoot an ice ball. Look, it's like he's driving. And finally, there was also a version released for the Nintendo DS. This one is another side-scroller, only this time in 2.5D. The levels and environments are very similar to the GBA game, only now instead of running in a straight line, you turn the corner every now and then. This version also uses 3D sprites, so Mr. Incredible and Frozone look a lot more like they did in the movie. Gameplay-wise, it's a bit less cumbersome than the GBA version because there are just more buttons to assign moves to. The touchscreen isn't really used for much on this one apart from some stats and the occasional flick or a tap for a special move. Here is a quick comparison of the DS and the GBA version. And so there we have it, every Incredibles game compared. And yes, I know there was also this game, but I see that as more of a Lego game, so it deserves its own video. As for the original Tyne games, well, I definitely think there are some nostalgic highlights amongst the pack. The original flagship game has some standout levels, whilst the Game Boy game is just so damn charming. Meanwhile, Rise of the Underminer can get repetitive, but I was surprised at how well it held up playing with a friend in co-op mode. But that's just my take. Please let me know your thoughts on the Incredible games in the comments below. Which one was your favorite version? Do you prefer the original or the sequel? And who else tried to run over this guy on the pavement? As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to my existing patrons. If you've enjoyed this video, then please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.